Welcome to our informational video on the era of progressive reform. We start off with me telling you about the origins of progressivism. By the end of the 1800s, many people were starting to become aware of the effects of rapid industrialization. There was a massive amount of unemployment, unsafe working conditions, and political corruption. This caused many young, well-educated men and women to push for change in the government's role in the country. With this new progressive reform movement, people urged for big changes in government. In 1879, Henry George wrote the book Progress and Poverty, which discussed land and property issues. This helped make people want the government to get rid of, or at least lessen the taxes for citizens. During this time, there was also the arrival of socialism. Socialists wanted the capitalist system in the country to be ended and distribute wealth more equally. Around this time, there was also the labor movement. The labor movement was a group of people that formed unions and, like socialists, wanted changes for the masses. Unions mainly focus on changes in wages, hours, and work conditions. Now on to Enzo, who will be informing you on the legislative impact of progressivism.
Wyatt, as you already know, much of the progressive reform began in the cities as opposed. Reforms made efforts to regulate or dislodge the monopolies that provided cities utilities such as water, gas, and electricity. Some reform mayors led movements for city-supported welfare services. Activists also targeted the workplace. Florence Kelley led the national campaign. After Massachusetts adopted a minimum wage in 1912, 8 other states followed. Now on to Colin with progressivism and its impact on national politics.
Thank you, Enzo. The progressive movement had always been a little more than a series of informational alliances. In 1912, however, a number of interests and groups associated with this movement came together in a formal political party. Though this party did not win the presidential election that year, the ideas continued to hold the attention of the American voters and politicians for a few more years. In August of 1912, they held their own convention and formed the Progressive Party, which later became the Bull Moose Party. The Bull Moose platform included tariff reduction, women's suffrage, more regulation of businesses, and an end to child labor, and an 8-hour workday, a federal workers' compensation system, and the popular election of senators. By the end of 1916, the reform spirit had sputtered out with the exception of the drive for women's suffrage. Now on to Mikala with Suffrage at Last, a turning point in history.
Thank you, Colin, for talking about the impact on natural politics. Now I'll be talking about the turning point in history. The Tennessee Senate passed the amendment, easily voting 25-4, but the State House of Representatives was bitterly divided. For the day after Sweating Day, the women and men who had fought for or against this moment anxiously waited and followed for every debate, every strategy move. By the time of the NASSA, Natural American Women's Suffrage Association, women had won many rights. For example, married women could buy, sell, and will property, yet many challenges remained. Legal attempts to win suffrage had failed. Suffragists followed two paths towards their goal. One path was to press for a constitutional amendment. The most commonly used method of amending the Constitution required 2/3 of each House of Congress to pass a measure, which then had to be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislature. By pushing for a federal amendment proved to be the more difficult approach. First introduced in Congress in 1868, a proposed amendment stalled. In the words of the suffrage leader Susan B. Anthony, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. With suffrage finally won, women advocates look forward to a host of new battles and a long and difficult struggle to achieve true equality for women.
In 1879, Henry George wrote the book Progressivism and Poverty, which discussed land and property issues.
Thank you, Wyatt. As you already know, much of the progressive reform began in the cities as opposed. Reforms made efforts to